So I want you to stay tuned to this lesson. If you know some about music theory, but you're still confused on things like when to use sharps and flats, you don't quite understand keys or the major scale, stay tuned. I'm gonna clear that all up for you in this lesson right now. Hey, I'm Daniel Seriff, and on this channel every week, I'm sharing with you the things that I've learned over the last 15 years as both a professional guitarist and teacher. And I'm sharing them with you, the intermediate guitarist, so that you can learn everything you need to know in order to improve. So if you're new here, make sure you go ahead, you click that subscribe button and ding the bell so that you know every time I upload a new video. In this lesson, we're gonna learn 4 really important rules about the major scale. And you might ask, why the major scale? Well, the major scale is the most important scale for understanding music theory. Now, you might say, wait, but for years I've played my pentatonic scales. Those are the ones I use all the time. Yes, that's true. Guitar players by nature, we use a lot of the pentatonic scale. It sounds great, and it's built into a lot of the music that we love. However, the major scale is the most important scale to learn and understand in order to know music theory in depth and really know what's going on. So that's why we're gonna use it. Now, don't you worry, we aren't gonna talk about reading music in this lesson. We're strictly just gonna talk about scales, how they fit, and the major scale. Alrighty, so there are a few kind of really important pieces of information that you need to know before you jump into this lesson. Number one, the first thing is you need to either know the notes on the guitar neck or at least know how to figure them out. If you don't know that information, don't worry. A couple videos ago, I did a lesson on how to learn the notes on the guitar neck in the simplest way. I highly recommend that. Go ahead, click above. You can check that lesson out and then come back after you're done. The second thing is, kind of going along with the notes on the guitar neck, you need to understand half steps and whole steps, right? So a half step would be 1 fret up or 1 fret down, including the open strings. And then a whole step, which would be like 2 frets up or 2 frets down. Again, if you know the notes on your guitar neck, you probably already know that information, but just to reiterate, it's really important. Thirdly, it would be a great idea to understand the formula of the major scale. We're gonna talk through it, but if you've already known a little bit about it, that will be helpful. But you should know that the major scale is formed from whole steps and half steps. It's gonna go whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. It's a good thing to know. We're gonna talk through it, so if you aren't super familiar with that, that's okay, but those are some really good things to know. The final kind of piece of information that would be good to realize is that keys and scales are the same thing, okay? It's really important, and people don't always present that as clearly. Like keys and scales, they're the same thing. So if I say I'm playing in the key of C major, that typically means I'm using the notes of the C major scale. Okay, great. Let's go ahead. We're gonna jump into what I call the 4 rules of the major scale. Rule number 1, you cannot have flats and sharps in the same key. Let's take, for example, the key of E major. I'll start on the high E string. Okay, so say I was working through this scale trying to figure out the notes, and maybe I was writing them down. So I start with E. I've got a whole step up. I've got F sharp. Okay, cool. Whole step up, G sharp. Half step, A. A whole step, B. A whole step, I don't know what to call it. Maybe I'll call it D flat. Nope, can't do that. Okay, so if you've chosen a key and you figured out, oh, okay, this key works best thinking about sharps, then we would typically consider that a sharp key. So the sharp keys are going to be G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, and C sharp. Great, okay, those are the sharp keys. The flat keys are going to be F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, C flat. So again, to reiterate, rule number 1 is that you cannot have flats and sharps in the same key. So E major fits in the sharp keys, and so we're gonna have E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, back to E. A sharp key would only have natural notes and sharps in it. Alrighty, great. Let's move on to rule number 2. So rule number 2 is that all 7 letters of the alphabet have to be present. Okay, so when we're figuring out the scales, it's really important that every letter of our musical alphabet is involved. Okay, so we can't skip over any of those letters. So let's think about if we were in the key of A major. Okay, I'll start it here on the 5th fret of the high E string. Okay, A, a whole step, to B, whole step, C sharp, half step to D, whole step to E, whole step, ooh, I was about to say G flat, but that would break 2 of my rules. It would break number 1, because you can't have flats and sharps in the same key, and also it would break the rule where, oh, well, if I skipped over my F letter of my alphabet, boom, I just skipped over a letter of the alphabet, that's not gonna work. Okay, cool, so that scale is actually A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, back to A. 7-note scale, and we finish on the root again, the 1. Rule number 3 is somewhat redundant, but equally important. What I found is that people who hadn't had these rules before, they didn't ever quite understand the scale. So let's jump into rule number 3. Rule number 3 is you cannot have 2 types of the same note, meaning like you can't have a G and a G flat in a key. You can't have an A and an A sharp. Let's look at a key that's kind of gets people a lot of times. F major. I'm gonna start on F on the 1st fret of the thinnest string. F, a whole step to G, a whole step, we got an A half step, A sharp. Oops, can't do that, right? Because we've already used A, F, G, A. We can't have an A sharp there. We have to call it B flat. And that will work great with the other rules we've already talked about. Although F only has 1 accidental in it, meaning a sharp or flat, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. But we need all 7 notes to be present, okay? F, G, A, it needs to be the next letter of the alphabet. Okay, B flat, yeah. C, D, E, F. That works better rather than trying to say an A and an A sharp. Doesn't work in a major scale. Now you might notice a few of these rules are redundant, but it's important to look at them from all the angles, and that helps the perspective and understanding. So I just wanted to say, if you have any thoughts or comments, go ahead, please leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about this lesson. If you've heard about some rules like this before, these are really important because they're gonna help you really understand all the keys in the major scale. I think that is so important, and it just makes you more fluid as a musician and understanding. And then you can add on more complicated, information later, and it just stacks. This is a great foundation to have. Let's talk about rule number 4. Again, it's kind of redundant, but if you're figuring out a scale, no matter what, rule number 4, you always have to use the next letter of the alphabet. Let's take a complicated key like D flat major, okay? I'm starting on the 2nd fret of the B string. D flat, okay, cool, I'm gonna go up a whole step. It has to be some kind of E. I know that's an E flat. Okay, let me go up a whole step. It's gotta be some kind of F. Well, what kind of F is that? That's a regular old F natural. Then I got a half step, G flat. A whole step, A flat. I know it has to be some kind of A. Next, it's gotta be some kind of B, it's a B flat. Next, it's gotta be some kind of C. It happens to be a C natural. And a half, I'm back to D flat. So again, when figuring out these scales, it's always gotta be the next letter of the alphabet, our musical alphabet. Okay, great, so let's just recap these 4 rules. Okay, number 1, you cannot have flats and sharps in the same key. Great. Number 2, all 7 notes have to be present, right? So we need one of each, A, B, C, D, E, F, G of our musical alphabet. Number 3, kind of redundant but important, you can't have 2 types of the same note, right? So you can't have a G and a G flat, you can't have an A and an A sharp in the same key. Okay, and then the 4th rule is when figuring out the scales in order, it's always gonna be the next letter of our musical alphabet. No matter how complicated the major scale is, it's always gonna be the next letter of the alphabet. Okay, great. So I wanted to let you know, below in the description, you can download the PDF of the 4 rules of the major scale, and not only that, but you can also get what I call the 15 logical major scales that I talked about earlier. And you can download that, and there's a little worksheet that you can do that will help immensely. That's all free. Just head over to my site down below, click that link, and I want you to download the rules. Feel free to print them off. Print off the 15 logical major scales. Those are all the scales that you need to know. Some of them sound complicated, but they aren't that bad. That's all you need to know, and it will strengthen your theory knowledge so much. Alrighty, so that's all for the lesson today. I just wanted to show you these 4 really important rules. Please go ahead, download the PDF. I think it will help you immensely. And if you have any comments, please remember, comment below. I'm happy to answer any questions and help you out. And also, if you're looking for any more free and great lessons, head over to my website, danielseriff.com, and there you can check out some great material as well. All right, so I will see you next week. Have a great week, have a great day, take care, and I'll see you soon.